Jonathan and I were back here with a fire going, and there was multiple Sasquatch around us, and they were doing, you know, that thing, I call it Sasquatch creeping, when you're talking, conversating, playing music, whatever, and they'll creep in. But the minute you're quiet and stop, they stop. We could not see them, and they kept making sounds, kept knocking and stuff, kept getting closer. After a half hour went by, I was done. I decided I wanted to go in. So we start to walk back. This is our backyard, and I hit a wall. Like, I just stopped. I wasn't scared. It wasn't fear. I just hit a wall, and just goosebumps covered my body. It just stopped me for a minute. We could feel this run off. We could feel it run off. It was 6 feet away from me at this tree, and it just takes off so fast and so strong that you could feel its feet hit the ground. It was absolutely incredible.
Sara, thanks for joining me on Bigfoot Crossroads, a platform that you're kind of familiar with, right?
I am. Thank you for having me. It's been a really long time, probably over a decade.
Yeah, that's crazy. I was thinking about that a while ago, as a matter of fact, like how long we've known one another. It's all kind of crazy that it's coming full circle at this point in life. Sara is the other half of the Brown property in Washington. But there's much more to you than that. You actually created the first logo for Bigfoot Crossroads years and years ago, whenever I first kicked it off with your husband, Jonathan, as my co-host. And here we are, like you said, over a decade later.
Over a decade later.
I don't even know if I've ever asked you this question personally. I probably did 15 years ago, but how did it start for you? Like you personally? I know the story of your property and everything, and obviously the thermal video, but how did all this Bigfoot stuff start for you?
It started on my first date with John. He brought it up on our very first date, and I thought it was funny. And I was like, no, this guy's serious, and then it didn't take me long to figure, okay, maybe there's something to this, because he's serious and he's telling me all these family stories and presenting some good evidence to me, So not long went by when John and his brother went to Lower Lewis Falls and they heard a Sasquatch. And then shortly after that is when we started hearing them here. They've probably always been here. According to the neighbors, they've been here. But we became aware of them back in 2012. And it's been a ride ever since. It took me quite a long time to be fully convinced that they were real. It actually took that daylight photo of the top of the head that I got for me to be fully convinced, because it was really hard for me to undo, years and years and years of thinking it was a joke.
Right.
But, once you sit back and you look at all of the evidence and everything, it's quite overwhelming, isn't it?
It's completely overwhelming. I mean, this stuff, I know to someone on the outside looking in, it doesn't seem like that substantial of an argument, just based solely on the fact that, well, it's never been proven. Where's all the clear videos? Where's the bodies, et cetera, et cetera. But if you're involved in this and really tapped into the Bigfoot community and the Bigfoot research community, information piles in all the time. And you guys have been kind of changed over from the research side. It seems like you guys are more interested in collecting the stories yourselves. Talk a little bit about your YouTube channel and what you're doing with it.
Okay, well, we actually do both. I still document everything. I don't know if you remember the journal that I used to keep, but I still write down all activity or all possible activity. And we also have another recording project that we're doing right now with our friend Steve Edwards. So we still are collecting, but on top of that, what our goal right now with our YouTube channel is to overwhelm the public with Sasquatch stories, Sasquatch encounters. And so we have people that collect evidence like us. And then we also have people who just had an encounter, one sighting somewhere. That's about it. It's on Salish Sasquatch on YouTube, if anybody wants to go check that out. But we have tons of evidence from our own property, as well as, again, these stories from other people. Most of them are from Washington State, with the exception of a few people that we've had from California.
Yeah, you guys are kind of focusing on the local area there, aren't you?
For now. Yeah, for now we are. Just because there's so much. You know, I mean, we still have the tribes we've got a lot of tribes that we have some projects lined up with. We want to get those stories out. And there's also a lot of older gentlemen that have been involved in the subject for a very long time, like John Andrews, who we did a video with not long ago. But there's some others that are getting up there in age that I would also like to film so that we can preserve their stories and their research.
What's some of the things, like some of the encounters that have really stood out of the people that you've spoken with for your YouTube channel?
We just interviewed a guy. Okay, so he had a few different encounters with these creatures in his lifetime. He's up in the northern Cascades of Washington State. Actually, I think that you're going to interview him pretty soon on your podcast, but his name is James, and he had a few different encounters, including a Sasquatch coming in and clearing out an entire campground that they were at. But the story that I like even better is his most he calls it his most intense story. This guy's a combat vet. You know, he trained combat. He's fought the drug cartels down in Central America. Like he knows combat. He knows, you know, stealthness, all of that. He's a hunter. And there was some Sasquatch flanking him and his friend one time for miles as they left the woods. When he tells a story, he just, you know, the goosebumps come over him, and it's just was quite traumatizing for him. And he just speaks about how he's never been up, even his times in war, he's never been up against anything like that in the woods. I just really love that story because that's how people always question, how come there's no videos? How come we don't, you know, have all of a body? How come we don't see them very often? And people do see them all the time. But I think their number one rule is to be stealth and elusive. And there is no other creature that is as good at it that is on this planet, in my opinion.
Your property became famous for the thermal video footage that kind of propelled you guys right into the heart of the Bigfoot world. So living on a property that's known to have at least occasional activity, what sort of things are like common occurrences around your place? But then, like, how often do you guys really encounter these things there?
Okay, so we hear them often. We hear them quite often. John heard the female, I think this was 4 or 5 nights ago now. John heard the female, what he believes was the female in the woods, talking. We hear them all the time, but the sightings are like once a decade. I mean, that's so rare that you see one. And I don't know if you knew that I saw one on May 10th.
Yeah.
May 10th of this year. But we believe that it's the same male that we keep seeing because the height of it, for one, the height keeps popping up. So the creature in the thermal video appears to be about the same height as the one in the daylight photo that I got. And in that daylight photo, he's got 2 colors going on his head, right? Like that reddish color, and then there's like some discoloration going on his head. Well, when I saw him on May 10th, he was about 600 feet away, but still I knew exactly what I was looking at. And he was two colors. It was orangutan red, like a bronzish color, and then like a blondish, grayish bronze color. We have a red German Shepherd that's getting very old. And this Sasquatch had almost the same two colorings on it. So I think it's the same male that we're working with. I did see another Sasquatch that one time through thermal that was significantly shorter and didn't have the conical head, and it was swaying. That was the first one I ever saw. And then other common things that we hear is we hear wood knocks and we hear rock clacking. And then we also hear lots of mimicking of sounds, lots of coyote mimicry. They'll mimic anything. I believe that they even mimic machinery, or you'll hear about car door slams in the middle of the forest. I think that they mimic whatever they can. We actually heard a really good impression of an ambulance one time when our window was open. It was the heat of the summer, and there was no cars coming or anything. And we hear an amazing impression of an ambulance, and it was walking down our fence line.
Oh, wow.
And our reaction is what caused it to stop. So it's mostly things like that. And then we hear a lot of weird sounds too. Just sounds that we're not sure what else it could be,
Right. Can you talk a bit more about the May 10th sighting, like how that happened and everything?
So Jonathan and I were sitting down in this area that we call the rock pit. There's all these stacked stones. And our property sits up on like a small hill. And there's a ridge that wraps around our entire property. And the ridge goes down into a valley. And then the river wraps around the valley. And so Jonathan and I were sitting down in this rock pit where you overlook the whole valley, and you can see into this tree line, which is east of our property. And you're familiar with the east side of our property. That's where the most activity is. That's where a lot of the resources are. What people need to understand is our property is a funnel to some very, very valuable resources, including a very large black walnut grove, creeks, an amazing spring-fed creek that has a lot of wild mint going through it. So it's like extremely clean, like you could drink it, So there's a lot of resources down there. But John and I were sitting here, and I was looking across the field while he was talking, and it was right there. It was right there, and then it was gone. And the sun was shining right on him. I knew exactly what I was looking at when I saw him. And I saw his head and everything. And it was so fast that I don't know which way he went. I don't know if he went right, left, or up, up, down. I have no clue. He was gone. I was high on adrenaline for a while after that. That was quite something else. That was like the time that I went to Knott's Berry Farm with my sister, and we rode roller coasters. We rode roller coasters all day. That's how I felt. I was just like so high on adrenaline that it made me want more, and I was like, man, I want to see one closer now. They don't let you see them though. It's just so rare. It's just so incredibly rare. We're trying to also get people to talk about this publicly, because there's a lot of people that fear ridicule with their stories. You know that. Like, would you say it's safe to call the number 1% of people actually report their sightings? It's not much more than that. All of the people that we come across have not reported their sightings. I know one person, that's my friend Ariel, who has reported hers when she was young. Most people don't report it, and we're trying to get people comfortable with this because it's backwards if you think about it. If somebody were to tell you that they saw a unicorn or something so rare, it shouldn't be looked at as so crazy. You know what I mean? It should be looked at as, man, you're freaking lucky. And I want people to feel lucky that they saw a Sasquatch, because it really is. It's an amazing thing. And most people in their lifetime are never going to get that opportunity.
I mean, how long was it since your last sighting of one on your property?
10 years before.
So 10 years.
Once per decade, yeah.
A 10-year gap, and you live on property that they frequent and travel through.
And that we hear them all the time, almost once a month at least. Sometimes there will be a couple months of dry spell, but for the most part, we hear them so frequently, whether it's a mile and a half away or, right at the tree line. The episode that happened, this was September 15th of 2023. This is the closest that I've ever been to one. Behind our property, there's about 120 feet of wooded area. And this is the wooded area. This is the 120 feet that you see between Jonathan and his brother and the Sasquatch on the ridge in the thermal video. So sometimes in the summer, we put a fire out there, and we've had people come camp out there too. And they'll usually come in and knock on trees if there's like campers and tents back here. Jonathan and I were back here with a fire going, and there was multiple Sasquatch around us, and they were doing, that thing, I call it Sasquatch creeping, when you're talking, conversating, playing music, whatever, and they'll creep in. But the minute you're quiet and stop, they stop. Mm-hmm. They can play that game all day. They'll do that for so long if they have to. We could not see them, and they kept making sounds, kept knocking and stuff, kept getting closer. After a half hour went by, I was done. I decided I wanted to go in. So we start to walk back, and I'm 6 feet from exiting the tree line into this is our backyard. And I hit a wall. Like, I just stopped, and I wasn't scared. It wasn't fear. I just hit a wall, and just goosebumps covered my body. It just stopped me for a minute, and then I was just like, oh my gosh, what in the world? We could feel this run off. We could feel it run off. It was 6 feet away from me at this tree, and it just takes off so fast and so strong that you could feel its feet hit the ground.
Wow.
And it's incredible how fast this thing scaled the yard. So I have a lot of shrubs and trees and things like that in the backyard. And I also have a chicken coop. This thing scaled everything in seconds. It was absolutely incredible. That's the closest I've ever been to one. And people ask me, how did they smell? And on that occasion, I didn't smell one. So I don't think that they always smell.
Yeah, I think it's a thing that an odor that possibly gets released on certain situations, like when they're excited or something, but I don't think it happens all the time. That running into that invisible wall that you're talking about, though, that's something that's commonly talked about among Bigfooters, running into the wall.
That happened to me on November 7th of just this month, too. November 7th. I was going to the front yard, and it was pitch black out there. Again, east side of the property. And as soon as I cleared this old house that's on our property, as soon as I cleared this old outhouse that's there, I hit that wall. I hit it so hard that my body just naturally took a sharp turn to the right. And I was like, okay, it's time to go back in.
Have you ever felt like you were in danger on your property?
The only time was, I told you about this years ago. This was probably, I would say 12 years ago. But I was down by the creek one day, and there was this overwhelming sense of, I don't know, I was just got really fearful. I don't know why. I was just extremely fearful. And all of a sudden, all of these knocks started coming from all over the tree lines around this valley, far and close. just beating on trees. And I was just like, what in the world is going on? What are they doing? I couldn't see any of them, but there were multiple individuals beating on trees while I'm down there. And I exited the tree line and got out into the open field and came home. And by the time I got back home, I was crying. I was in tears. And I can't explain that. I don't know why. I just felt like maybe something was stalking me or something. I'm not sure. And I'm not saying that it was a Sasquatch. I don't think that Sasquatch typically are like that, especially not the ones here. But I just can't answer that. I don't know what it was. I don't know if something was warning me, if they were warning me.
Yeah.
I can't answer that. That's like the most intense feeling that I've ever had here. And that it was just that one time. And, you know, I go to that area often. It's not a bad area, but it was just something about that day. There was something there that I don't think it was a safe thing.
Earlier today, I made a post on Instagram, on the Instagram account. My friend Jonathan Dodd, artist extraordinaire, had done a rendition of my first sighting that I had through the night vision. He heard me being interviewed on Bigfoot Society podcast and shared the artwork with me, told me I could use it if I wanted to. So I went and I found the original report that I had submitted to BigfootEncounters.com back years and years ago, whenever it happened, 2002. And I just kind of overlaid the text, you know, on the artwork or whatever. And I hadn't read that report in a really long time. And as I was reading through it, I noticed that I specifically mentioned that I was with a group of researchers, a small group. There was like 4 of us, I think. And 2 of them were female. And I put that in the report because back then I was told that women attract Bigfoot for whatever reason. They seem to have better luck. I know at your house, there's you and your family, which consists of women, and Jonathan.
Don't discount David.
Right. But does activity increase whenever the men are gone?
No, not that I've noticed. No. They've probably known John since he was young.
This is family property, right?
This is family property. Yeah, generations of family. And again, we're on tribal lands. John is tribal.
Right.
A lot of people, including David Ellis. I was just talking to Shane Corson about this last night on the phone. And him and David Ellis both think that a big reason why they're often on towards the front yard on the east side of the property is because David, Jonathan's uncle, who's there. I don't know if you want to talk about this or whatnot, or if you feel like some of your listeners might be too sensitive, but David is very autistic and he's a genius, but he does the same routine every day. He does the same exact thing on Mondays. Every Monday, he eats the same thing. Every Tuesday, he eats the same thing. He does the exact same thing every day. And I think that they find comfort in that. These creatures are the masters of reading body language. And I think that there's something very disarming about somebody who is autistic like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think they definitely have the ability to read somebody's if they're dangerous or not. You know, the aggression that a person has or whatever. If they're a hunter, you know, they treat them a certain way compared to a child. And I know that they've always seemed to be fascinated with children. I know there's, you know, of course, the horror stories out there that they kidnap people and eat them and everything else. But yeah, I think you're right.
I could be wrong, but I think that Sasquatch are kind of like people. And I think that naturally it is not in their nature to harm humans. But I do think that every once in a while, just like humans, you're going to get a Jeffrey Dahmer. You're going to get, you know, those bad things. And also, I can't discount the fact that some of these groups that I hear about, like in Alaska and things like that, these groups that are more aggressive or even on the border of violent, I often wonder if something happened to them, if there was too much human encroachment or something that caused them to be like that.
Or even if human encroachment is kind of still new to them compared to where it is other places, you know?
Yeah.
The biggest incident in all my years of Bigfooting, outside of, you know, my own personal, you know, the first sighting that I had and things like that. But whenever we went down to Texas that time and my friend Roddy saw one, and I mean, it just completely rocked him. He was not ready for that. That night was the most intense activity I've ever experienced. I mean, there was a group of us there and they just did not care. They did not care at all. And the weird thing about it was the individual that was there, I still believe there was more than one. I think there was two of them down there, but we only saw one. It had the opportunity to leave, and it didn't. It stayed there and waited for more to come.
Oh, wow.
But this was in an area, which was a hunting area, to be fair. And there was access to a creek. It was like a spillway for underneath a dam. So there was people there, but the area that we were at was kind of like the entrance to the public hunting grounds that was only open certain times of the year. There's only, you know, so many months you can even get back there. And I don't think a lot of people hunted back there. It didn't seem to have a lot of traffic, at least. I could be completely wrong, but I don't think they were used to seeing people. I don't think they were used to having people in that area. I think they felt like, you guys are in our territory. And they were not bashful about it at all. And we went back the next day, and sometime after we left, which I want to say it was like 1:30. It was between 1:30 and 3 a.m. whenever we left the area. And they were still around. They weren't making any more vocalizations or anything, so there wasn't any really point for us being there anymore. So we all loaded up and went back to camp. The next morning, about 10 a.m., we went back, and the entire place was just destroyed. I don't have any other way to put it. Like, brush and saplings were all ripped out of the ground. A tree that was like right next to where I had my vehicle parked. It looked like, I don't even know how to explain it. It was like if you can just imagine, I'm not saying this is what happened, but if you can just imagine somebody chopping down a tree with rocks, it was just like busted and torn and everything. And this tree was a big, tall, you know, pine tree. I mean, it was probably, I don't know, 50, 60 feet tall. And it would have fallen, but it like got hung up in the branches and the vines of other trees and didn't fall. But it was like literally right where my vehicle had been parked. Like something destroyed this tree and tried to push it over to block where I had just parked the night before. And I've never seen anything like it. I mean, it was just crazy. And I've often thought over the years that response was because it was a group that wasn't used to people. Because most of my research was conducted in a national park with campgrounds where these things were used to people. They didn't act aggressive. They didn't really care about hiding themselves that much. And it was just entirely different behavior to me. So I sometimes wonder if like the whole Alaskan thing being sort of the last frontier, you know, and these areas where you have a lot of like major wilderness going on, if maybe that's the cause of the differences in behavior, where they're just not used to the encroachment. They're not used to having people living around them and stuff, and they're still trying to actively and aggressively push them out.
I would agree with that. I think that a lot of, it seems like the encounters that people have of the Sasquatch that live on the outskirts of society are more docile. They're not the same as Sasquatch that are way, you gotta go a couple days to get to them.
Right.
John Andrews recordings are a really good example of that. Those are out in the middle of nowhere, where he got those recordings. And I just can't see us getting recordings like that here. I mean, we have some recordings that I don't know how it's possible other people didn't hear, but to have those constant roars and stuff, that would be something different. And it seems like that's more out there. I've heard that there's a place called Gold Bar in Washington, and I've heard that there's a group there that is quite aggressive. And that's actually not as rural as you'd think. So I wonder what went on there. But they're known for being very aggressive.
Well, you know, in southeastern Oklahoma, they're also known as being aggressive there. And I think it has a lot to do with the area, because down there in particularly, I mean, I know it's not just there. There's other places like this, but it's kind of one of those areas where if you hear something, you know, sneaking around on your property at night, you just step outside and fire a round off at it. Mm-hmm. That's just the way that the people are down there. You definitely don't want to go trespassing down there. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if they've, you know, encountered that type of behavior from humans, you know, humans taking shots at them and, you know, being aggressive, acting towards them. And you just have to kind of think about how they perceive your actions, because like you were saying, they're masters of reading body language. So how are our actions coming across to them? Mm-hmm. Which I think that's like why you have a lot of situations with hunters, because hunters are in that hunting mentality at the time. And the Bigfoot doesn't know that, you know, the hunter is necessarily only hunting a deer. They just know that a human's out there with a gun and they're hunting.
Did you hear about that encounter where that guy, he had dropped down in the fetal? Man, I want to say this is Oklahoma. I'm probably botching that. But this guy dropped down in the fetal position, and there was a male and a female there. And he wanted to toss the female his apple, you know, just to try to de-escalate the situation. And he said that in order to get to the apple, he had to pass his gun that was on his hip. And every time his hand would go close to the gun, the Sasquatch, the male, would growl. So I just find that so significant. Like, they know what that is.
Yeah.
But he was, don't you dare, don't you touch that. If you touch that, you know, you're done. I think that's another thing. People need to be very careful when they encounter Sasquatch. You know, we had somebody suggest on our channel recently that you do the, you put both hands up. She said it's a universal sign for mountain men. You know, you put your both hands up and show your palms. And I think that's probably a good idea.
I mean, that was, you know, taught by Robert Morgan in the 70s. You know, if
really?
Yeah, if you encounter, that was his whole thing. Like, if you encounter a Sasquatch, put your palms to the sky, show that you're unarmed. Oh,
that's a good idea. Yeah.
Which I don't necessarily know that they would know, you know, the meaning, our meaning behind it. Just like whenever people talk about like X formations and tree formations, I don't necessarily think that if they are responsible for those, that they're meant for us and that we know what they mean exactly. We just kind of put our own definitions on them.
I think that it's just a trail marking, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, I've got my reasons. You know, I've done the work before.
Hear 'em. Let's hear it.
I mean, so like, okay, so a lot of X formations that I ran across personally, I noticed that there was another limb involved. It wasn't always an X formation. Sometimes it formed what I call an artist easel, because it was like an A with an extended crossbar and it extended, you know, legs and everything. And while it kind of looks like an X, I get it. But if you lined up just right and looked through the hole, you would see another formation in the distance. Usually not too far away. And it seemed like it just kind of, certain formations led to certain geographical features. I'll put it that way. Mm-hmm.
I would agree with that.
There was also a formation that, like, I don't really hear people talking about very much. I call it a crossbar or a doorway, because it makes like basically the frame of a door out in the woods. Very easy to spot if you're looking for them. I don't know what those represent. They didn't point directly towards anything that I saw. There was a couple that I found that pointed towards fence lines. If that top limb that's broken over is actually a pointing device. But, you know, that's just speculation. I never got to ask a Bigfoot exactly what it meant.
Do you remember I would call them rooms, the blueprints that were on the floor of the east side of our property?
Yeah.
It was like the diameter of the trees was, I would say, between 4 and 6 inches. And it would be like 4 or 5 trees that were on the ground forming a perfect square or a shape like that. You know, like each end of each log met up till it formed a shape, an enclosed shape. And then off of that, there was another room and then another room. And there were 4 different, what looks like rooms. And that's one of the most odd things that I've ever found here.
I mean, what do you think that's for? You know, because like,
I have no idea. I can't even begin to speculate. It's just one of the weirdest things I've ever found. And there's not a person in the world that would see that and say that that happened naturally. It's impossible.
Right. But it's also something where it's not like standing up. So if you're like in an upright position or like you're looking through the trees, you're not going to see it. It's down on the ground. So like it has to be.
It looked like blueprints to a house.
Yeah.
It just looked like, you know, that's what it looked like rooms.
Did you ever check to see if it matched the layout of your property?
Somebody said that before, and no, it doesn't. But somebody asked that. Yeah, you're not the first.
Yeah, that would be super creepy.
It would be creepy. I don't know how I would feel about that if that was the case.
I don't know how you guys go outside at nighttime. Like the whole like.
I'm not scared of them. I'm not scared of this group. They could have snapped my neck 100 times over by now if they wanted to.
I get that.
You know, they're not my friends. I'm not saying they're my forest friends or anything like that. They're wild and everything. And I have a healthy respect, you know, a fearful respect for them. But at the same time, I know that they're not going to hurt me.
Have you ever tried any, like, I don't want to say gifting, but like leaving objects or anything? Have they ever interacted in any way?
So I tried painting sticks one time, like tribal designs and stuff on them. And I left them in the woods and they disappeared, but I don't know what happened to them. Anything could have happened.
Right.
It seems like with a lot of Sasquatch activity, things like that will reappear in the same spot. I never had that happen. So I don't know. What I do sometimes, a few times a year, I would say 4 or 5 times a year, is I will go buy a bag of organic apples and I will leave those. And I was told by an old man who had them frequent his property that you never place them on the ground. They won't eat them off the ground. You always put them on a stump or something higher up. They don't appreciate their food on the ground, he said. So I always put them higher up, and they're always gone the next day. But I don't, you know how I feel about cameras. Cameras
Right.
don't work. So I just leave it. You know, I just kind of do it as, I guess, maybe like a peace offering or something. I don't know. But, you know, just like I feed all the wildlife around here, I've got a lot of bird flocks and stuff. I just like doing that every once in a while. But other than that, we don't really gift.
There was this lady that I interviewed on the podcast before that had sent me some pictures from her property and something, we don't know what, but there's a lot of stuff going on. I have my reasons to believe that it was Bigfoot activity. But one of the things that she sent me was these pictures of tomatoes that had been like strung, like speared onto little tiny broken tree branches on a tree, like 8 to 10 feet up in the air. Where, like, I mean, it had to have been something with hands to do it. Like, there's no other way it could have happened.
Like they were keeping them there for later?
I don't know. I've never encountered the stuff that she had happening on this property. Like, I've never heard stuff.
They're all different, aren't they?
Yeah.
It seems like all situations like ours, it's all a little different.
But your situation is unique in the perspective that it's native land, it's family land, and the belief is they have been there traveling through that property for a very long time, long before you guys were there.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys hear stories from like neighbors and other people still?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I wish that I could get all of these people on camera. A few of them are willing, but most just, they're just still uncertain about going on camera. But there's a woman that lives down the street. You remember the fisherman we used to always talk to about?
Right.
It's his sister. She told me that they used to walk on the house, that there was a young one that would walk on top of the house and she would hide in her bed. She would pull her covers over her head because it scared her so bad.
That's just crazy. But like, I mean, it's the same
totally
stuff that
crazy.
I hear
this
here.
Is not that long ago. It's not long ago either. I mean, this woman's in her late 50s, early 60s, I would say.
I mean, how are the people around there? Like, what are they like whenever it comes to the subject? Are they just like, yeah, like, you know what I mean? Like, are they just talking about it like it's any animal, wild animal? Right. Yeah.
A lot of people do. However, a lot of people put blanket statements over tribes. Like they'll say the natives believe this.
Right.
That's not true, because within this tribe, even within this family, Jonathan's father comes from a huge family, and even his sisters, his brothers and sisters, there's even different beliefs within them. Some people believe that it's a thing that walks between worlds. Some people think that it's an ancient type of human. Some people don't believe in them at all, and some people get really offended by it. They do not want to have any talk about it, but it varies. There's no blanket, there's no agreement.
Right.
However, the people that are aware of them, for the most part, they talk about it like it's nothing.
I just know the native communities here that, I was a part of whenever I was Bigfooting were very it was like they weren't filling out sighting reports. They weren't going on camera and talking about it. But if they knew you or knew someone that kind of vouched for you, they'll talk about it around a campfire or something. They'll tell you a story or whatever. And they were just it's just very matter of fact. Just these things are out there and we deal with them on a regular basis. And we don't want the attention. We don't want people, ridiculing us. And that's just the way it was. And stuff happened all the time. And from my understanding, sightings and encounters still happen all the time in those communities. Mm-hmm. Like on a regular basis. Like it's not, I think there's like 100 and something sighting reports on the BFRO database for Oklahoma, but people I know that are, tuned into the Bigfoot world in Oklahoma right now, 50 to 100 sightings every year happen easily that they hear exactly. about. And that's just the ones they hear about. So it's just mind blowing. There was one small Native American community here that had a town hall meeting about it because they were coming in every night and raiding trash cans and being a nuisance and causing problems. And they were trying to figure out what to do about it.
Oh, that happened on the Skokomish reservation here. They were raiding some trash cans for a while, even in broad daylight.
I mean, why do you think they do that? Do you think it's just are they really forced to?
I think maybe sometimes they just get so comfortable with the people and they know that, after observing for so long, they know that those people aren't going to hurt them. These Sasquatch here, they know I'm not armed. I'm never, they know that I'm not going to, I'm going to run for my life if one is too close for me. I'm not going to, I'm not going to hurt. I'm not going to harm them or anything like that. They know that. And I think that they know that with, I don't know of a Native American. I haven't met one that would ever shoot one. I think that that's probably against, all beliefs, full stop, when it comes to that, because, that's just, I've never, ever heard anybody suggest that. Just like I've never heard anybody here suggest that they were an ape. That is one belief that is lacking. Nobody thinks they're an ape.
So I just had Kathy Strain on recently. Again, someone I've known for
She's
a very long
awesome.
time. Yeah. Love Kathy. And, you know, she's a scientist, and she is part of kind of a scientific based research group whose objective is to harvest a specimen to prove their existence so they can provide legal protection for the species and recognition. And man, oh man, people were not happy with that.
Yeah. I mean, to each his own. I don't want to, I wouldn't do that. I would never do that. That would not even cross my mind. And let me just tell you, I think that I hope that if this is to be, I'm okay if they're left undiscovered. I like the mystery. I love chasing the biggest mystery on earth. It is so fun. And it's just fun to uncover. It's fun to listen to people talk. It's fun to put puzzle pieces together. I'm okay if they're never discovered. If they are, I'm going to quote my friend Jack Bowers and say that I would rather have one walk out in front of a semi truck and there be too many people as witnesses for it to be confiscated. However, I look at it like this. If that happens, if somebody takes a specimen or if one walks out in front of a truck, what is that going to do? That's going to give us a body, but it's not going to teach us anything. We're not going to know how large their territories, how often they breed, what they eat, what they require. We're going to learn nothing about that. And I think that it's going to be a complete and utter destruction of the economy. It's going to be just like the northern spotted owl, what it did to the economy in Oregon. I mean, it destroyed logging overnight. And I think that this would absolutely devastate our economy. It would shut everything down. So I think that these people are eager to have a body because they want to understand. But I don't know how much understanding that would actually give us, if that makes sense. We still won't know about their behavior, you know?
Yeah. So you're not out to shoot one.
Never.
You're not pro camera.
I was for years, you know. I have thoroughly documented for years. I tried placing cameras everywhere. I put thermal cameras 15 feet up in trees overlooking the valley. I put tiny cameras that were, they used Wi-Fi. This is when Wi-Fi cameras first came out. I would say 8-9 years ago, you know, those little ones that I think they were called like view cameras. And I would say they're about an 8.5 or an inch and a half an inch and a half tall by like an inch wide. And they ran off Wi-Fi and they were motion cameras. And I put them covering this ridge. I put them covering the tree line. I put those cameras everywhere. And I tried for years to gather some sort of camera evidence, and they avoid those like the plague. It did not matter what kind of camera. And even like, there was one day where I waited. I was like, okay, we don't get days over here that are over 100. We just don't get that. But there was one coming up one time where it was going to be super hot. And I was like, okay, I know for sure they're not going to be on this side of the river. They're going to be up in the springs, up by the springs, right? Because they don't drink stale creek water. They like that water.
Right.
So I waited till this day and I planted this camera, and no, they avoided it like the plague. And as soon as I would remove any of these cameras, they would show us that they were using this area again. And so I think that cameras, for whatever reason, I don't think that it has to be a paranormal thing, why they know they're there. I think that it could just be their senses, their heightened senses. I think that they can see them, smell them, feel them, all of those things when it comes to these cameras. And they just don't work. We've had multiple comments on our YouTube channel from people saying, where I live in Washington State, they're known as pests, and we use trail cameras to keep them away. And I had another woman say, trail cameras are what we use for repellent because of how they are here in Washington State. There's different people that don't know each other saying that's what works. If they're being obnoxious, you keep them away with trail cameras.
No shooting, no cameras. you're recording audio. What is your goal in all of this? What are you wanting to accomplish whenever it's all said and done with and you're no longer involved in this? What do you want to have accomplished?
I just want people to know the truth if they're after it, I guess. There's a fantastic creature out there that's very rare, and it's the most amazing creature that I'm aware of, and I would like to know more about it. And for those people out there that also want to know about it, I want them to know as well. I feel like I'm in this situation, this amazing situation I was given where they're in my yard, and it would be a shame if I didn't talk about that, if I didn't share that. So I think that's why, is just for those that want to know, give them just a little glimpse of who they are. I think that's about it. Yeah. I want to say one more thing about cameras that I've learned. Cameras work if you're holding it. If it's on you, they work. Like every time I hear, I heard there's a new trail cam photo coming out of Oregon, I'm just like, right. No way. No, they don't work. But what we have learned, so the daylight photo I got, I was holding the camera. The footage that Jonathan and Ben got, they were holding the camera. Patterson Gimlin holding the camera. Freeman holding the camera. Planting stuff in their homes, in their territory, it doesn't work. So I think my goal is to get some good thermal equipment. We have yet to get a good thermal camera since John captured that. So I would like to get better thermal footage than what we have right now. But in order to do that, you got to be holding that camera.
Do you guys have the thermal footage on your YouTube channel?
Yeah, we do. It's on there. I think it's called like the best thermal footage ever of a Sasquatch. It's on.
It's not clickbait. That's the truth. Just for the record.
Yeah. So it's on Salish Sasquatch channel on YouTube. And they can also find the daylight photo that I got there. That is under a video titled New Bigfoot Sighting on Indian Reservation.
And this footage was obtained years and years ago, but I'm telling you, it has been put through the ringer. I'm one of the people that put it through the ringer. I never went, on site or anything, but a lot of other people did, including Phil Poling of Para Breakdown, and he gave it his stamp of approval. And I mean, if there's a blemish in something, if there's a weak point in the armor, Phil will find it.
He's so good at what he does.
Yeah. Well, Sarah, thanks for joining me again. It was
thanks
good
for having me.
Yeah, it was good talking to you. And of course, we'll talk again. We talk pretty regularly now, but yeah, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, I look forward to our upcoming project together.
Absolutely. And if you've had your own encounter with Bigfoot and you'd like to share your story, send me an email at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com. Check out the website, bigfootcrossroads.com. You can find links to social media, past episodes, merchandise, everything you need all in one place. And until next time, remember, there's something in the woods.